As the US presidential campaign races into its final days, American voters face an historic choice: a vice president who could become the nation's first woman commander-in-chief, or a former president in his third bid for the White House. Both hold starkly different visions for America and the issues that continue to divide it: an uncertain economy, contraception and reproductive health care, and the rights of migrants and minority groups. As Election Day looms, the question remains: can the next president bring these divided United States back together? It's often referred to as America's Motor City for its groundbreaking role in auto production. But Detroit faces tough reality, with some manufacturing moving out of state and technology reducing the need for manual labour. The future is uncertain. While some say electric vehicles will be a saviour of jobs, others say that they'll lead to a leaner workforce. At Macomb Community College, students are future-proofing themselves for an auto industry in the midst of great change by learning skills that they can apply to building electric vehicles. They'll earn between $25 and $30 an hour upon graduating. But Marissa Jones, who already builds cars for Chrysler, says it's not only about financial incentives.
More job security. Actually, it's not more money starting off because I'm at 42 now, but it's more job security and it's education.
Detroit was once a great powerhouse in vehicle production, but the signs of its decline are clear to see here. Brian Pannebecker built cars for 30 years and thinks President Joe Biden is making things worse.
The government is trying to force us into electric vehicles before anybody's ready, the consumers or the infrastructure.
He started Auto Workers for Trump and believes the former president will ditch the Biden administration's electric push, which offers tax credits to drivers buying them and helps convert factories to produce them. Policies Kamala Harris is expected to continue. In Michigan, they're facing a choice between clinging onto the gas-powered industry that put it on the map or embracing an electric one to drive it into the future. We've arrived in Lansing, Michigan's state capital. At the last census, its population was recorded at around 112,000 people. Lansing used to be an industrial powerhouse thanks to the automotive industry. But today, about 1 in 5 people living here have incomes below the poverty line. Laura Grimwood sees the hardship people are facing here every day. The City Rescue Mission of Lansing offers beds for those who need them, but in the last 20 years that need has more than tripled.
The cost of living has gone up, the cost of groceries has gone up. It's impacting us as well. So we're helping people who are struggling to make ends meet, who have lost their housing because they can't afford the rising cost of medication, the rising cost of groceries, the rising cost of housing.
Lynette and Tim Caldwell know all about rising costs. With 6 children, including 5 that they've adopted, they have felt the pinch of inflation. Living costs have risen 20% for Americans since the pandemic, and last year people spent 11% of their incomes on food, the highest proportion in more than 3 decades.
We're making more because we've gotten raises, but I feel like we can't get ahead.
Lynette says her grocery bill has more than doubled in the past few years. Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are promising to help families like hers. Trump plans to expand oil and gas drilling, which he says will bring down energy costs for families, while Harris has proposed a federal ban on price gouging by food producers and grocers and tax cuts for the middle class. But Tim and Lynette are pretty sure which box they're going to tick on voting day.
He does say things that get on people's nerves. I'm not sure I would want him to come over to my house for dinner, but I think he's a good president.
It's a decision being debated in American living rooms just like this one, as they search for a president who can help lower everyday costs. There are a few places in this nation more divided right now than a small community in the US state of Michigan called Green Charter Township. It's here a Chinese-owned company plans to build a large electric vehicle battery factory. Some see it as a chance for new jobs, economic growth and a prosperous future. Others are concerned about having Chinese investment so close and what that might mean. Concerns over Chinese investment have lit a fire inside Ormond Hook.
So this is still the Goshen land. There's 270 acres.
Ormond and a number of his neighbours are leading the fight to stop a $1 billion EV battery plant by Goshen, a US-based subsidiary of a Chinese company, even helping overthrow the township's board of trustees for supporting it.
Why is America voluntarily surrendering to the economic wishes of China?
Goshen has repeatedly denied any links to communism. President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act provides billions in green energy subsidies to boost foreign investment. Goshen reportedly received $800 million in tax exemptions and grants to build the plant from the state of Michigan.
I think the Americans should be putting and investing into American companies, not Chinese companies.
Carlene Rose and Jim Chapman, though, say Goshen is offering Green Charter Township new beginnings.
Our children move away too. This is an opportunity to keep them here. This is an opportunity for us to grow.
What are they going? Come on in and spy. What are you going to get? Carlene's fudge recipe?
Donald Trump has said he's 100% opposed to the project, saying it puts Michiganders under the thumb of the Chinese Communist Party. Kamala Harris, meanwhile, seems less focused on China, barely mentioning it during her convention speech in August. Foreign investment is another economic concern for communities across America as they determine whether wealth from overseas can help them grow, or if it poses a threat to their way of life.
The gender voting gap in America has never been wider. Younger women are moving left and younger men are shifting right. That could help determine who the next resident of the White House will be. It's a high-stakes election for female voters, with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump offering very different visions for the future of the nation. We're hitting the road, covering more than 1,000 kilometers from Utah to Arizona to find out how women will vote in 2024. The Great Salt Lake divides Utah's left-leaning capital from its red neighbors. The Beehive State has long been a Republican stronghold, anchored by Utah's sizable conservative Mormon population.
Make it personable, make it fun, because these are like Americans that we're all going to try and get out to vote.
But young, progressive female Democrats here in Salt Lake City are working to change that. They say the new face of the party, Kamala Harris, best represents their needs.
I think especially with abortion, Joe Biden wasn't comfortable talking about it as much as she is.
For the Americans still reeling from Donald Trump's first divisive term, there's a sense Harris could help heal the nation's wounds.
Women have the power to do a lot more of the negotiating, of the compromising, of building unity, bringing people together.
But there's a mountain of difference between those views and people living a few hundred kilometers down the road. In Cedar City, they call this a Trump train. Its mostly male drivers look back fondly on life under Donald Trump.
Everything went down, gas prices, rent, mortgages, everybody's pay went up. He just knows how it all works.
Research from Harvard found Democrats are losing ground with young men, with 10% fewer identifying with the party now than in 2020. They're turning instead to Trump's populist promise for America. The Republican candidate still has a loyal female fan base, despite being convicted of sexual abuse.
I feel like we focus more on who is he as a leader rather than who he is as a person as he's leading our country.
As election campaigning reaches its final stages, there's a sense here that change could be on the horizon. Next stop, Sin City, where dreams are supposedly made. but it's not all happily ever after. Behind the glitz and the glamour of the Las Vegas Strip, there's a side to this city that most never see. Nevada has some of the highest childcare costs in the nation, with families spending a third of their income just to provide care for their kids. Now women here are betting on which candidate's going to help ease the burden come November.
Hi there. She's already trying to escape, right? Say hi.
Kathleen Miller runs Living Grace Homes, which supports mums on the verge of homelessness. While housing, groceries and transport have all shot up in recent years, daycare costs are out of reach for many. They've gone up 6.2% over the past year, more than double the rate of inflation.
Single moms, even in a good economy, struggle more.
Many daycares closed down during the COVID-19 pandemic and haven't reopened, leading to an acute shortage and pushing up prices. Donald Trump says expanding tariffs on foreign imports will make the country better off overall, but hasn't specified how that will impact childcare costs. Kamala Harris said she'll cap those costs and give parents tax breaks.
If I had to pick to be anybody, maybe her, to be honest. But they say a lot of things and then things don't change, so we'll just have to see.
Until then, childcare costs are driving women out of the workforce. Economists warn even temporary career breaks can have a long-term impact on women's earnings and career paths. That means America's childcare crisis could reverse years of progress towards equity and deepen the gender pay gap. We've just crossed the border from Nevada into Arizona. That's another key swing state. Of all the election battles unfolding across America, the one playing out on this vast, dusty terrain might be the most emotive of all. Arizona's a state bitterly divided over access to abortion. The US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, eliminating the constitutional right to abortion. That meant individual states got to decide their own laws. Reproductive rights are a fundamental issue for voters here, with both sides seeing it as a matter of life and death.
You don't have to come back to Planned Parenthood. This is a terrible place.
A small but vocal group of conservative Christians stands vigil here every week in Glendale, mourning the abortions taking place inside.
We can't pick and choose who lives and who dies, and that's what we're doing.
21 out of 50 US states now have total bans or severe restrictions in place. That's forced women to cross into neighboring states to get the procedures they need.
Our voices are louder than the anti-choice voices.
At around 19 weeks pregnant, Morgan Finkelstein was told one of her twins had a congenital heart defect.
I was shattered. I mean, we were so excited. We've already had a registry and we were receiving, boy onesies in the mail. The last one.
She fled to California for a selective reduction, where one fetus is terminated, as she couldn't get the procedure in Arizona. She later gave birth to Piper, a healthy baby girl. Out on the campaign trail, the Harris-Walz ticket has become the most pro-choice in US history. The Democrats say they want to restore Roe v. Wade protections nationally. Donald Trump boasts about overturning that law, calling abortion access a state decision, not a federal one.
Listen to what Donald Trump says. He has no idea what is involved in prenatal care, in pregnancy care, miscarriage management, just in general.
But Trump is still in line to secure the vote of millions of anti-abortion Americans.
He's not perfect. None of us are perfect, but I trust him over her.
Women helped elect Trump in 2016 and Joe Biden in 2020. With polling showing a tight race, it could be female voters once again who decide who wins the White House in 2024.
There's been a lot of talk in recent years about how divided Americans are over policy, over identity, over culture, over visions of the future. But here in El Paso, Texas, that division is tangible. The Texas governor has ordered the National Guard to build this razor wire barrier between the Lone Star State and not Mexico, but New Mexico. It's the first border wall to be constructed between two U.S. states, as the issue of immigration splits citizens, and physical divisions like these are being set up right across the U.S., dividing communities, cities, and states. The U.S.-Mexico border runs for more than 3,100 kilometers. Until the 1940s, short fences were primarily built to stop animal crossings. But now, 9-meter-tall steel barriers and long stretches of razor wire are designed to stop migrants. Increasingly, the border wall is also dividing Americans. On one side, a view that migrants should be offered help. On the other, a belief the U.S. is being invaded by extremely dangerous people. The rape and murder of 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary in Houston last June, allegedly at the hands of 2 Venezuelan migrants in the country illegally, has intensified the debate. Her mother has blamed what she calls the Biden administration's open border policy for her daughter's death.
They are nothing but monsters who are predators, and those are the kind of individuals that we so openly let in this country.
Border crossings hit a record high of nearly 250,000 last December. The numbers have since fallen about 75%, but Republicans have latched on to Jocelyn's murder and others like it ahead of the November elections.
We have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
The data doesn't back up that claim. Extensive research shows migrants, legal and illegal, commit fewer crimes than native-born Americans.
In sociology, it's an idea called minority threat. Whenever there's a threat to something or people think something's going to be taken away, they vilify that group.
A report by the Pew Research Center found that the majority of Americans believe the large number of migrants entering the country leads to more crime. And polling shows that for the first time in nearly 2 decades, the majority of Americans want less immigration. For Texas, that includes internal migration. The state has constructed this fence to keep migrants who have crossed from Mexico into New Mexico illegally from then walking into Texas. It's the first ever barrier between 2 U.S. states.
A focus from Republicans.
A 4-hour drive away in Hobbs, New Mexico, anti-immigration rhetoric has residents on edge.
Trump es una amenaza para nosotros. Que nos dice que si él gana nos va a sacar así de volada, que nos va a retirar de donde estamos aquí en Estados Unidos.
They worry that false claims of migrant-fueled crime will further divide American opinion and lead to stricter immigration laws. But while Texas and New Mexico grapple with a physical barrier, one U.S. state has become so divided, there's a move underway to carve it in two, to draw a new state line, separating Democrats in the West from Republicans in the East, who would secede and join conservative Idaho. That state is Oregon, in America's Northwest. A seemingly peaceful Sunday market in the West Coast city of Astoria. But here, tensions are simmering.
I feel like this country is definitely having a second civil war, basically.
This is the western part of Oregon, where people tend to be progressive and where the majority vote Democrat.
I've lived on the better half all my life.
Definitely divided, and it comes down to the ideologies of both parties.
Start moving east, and as the landscape changes, so does the politics. Sitting on the dividing line is Prineville. In May, voters here became the latest to say they want to leave Oregon. So far, 13 of the state's 36 counties have agreed to join largely Republican Idaho. Democrat Brian Samp is fighting to keep the state together and is running for a seat in Oregon's House of Representatives.
If everybody is willing to sit down and actually have a discussion instead of point fingers, we might get something done.
The time for talking, though, may have already passed. For Matt McCaw, it's not a question of why shouldn't the state divide, but rather why wouldn't it, when there's so much the two sides disagree on.
So that's immigration, that's minimum wage, that's taxes, that's abortion, that's Second Amendment, drugs. I mean, just about every topic.
It's a physical, geographical divide, but one that's underscored by invisible ideological differences. The Greater Idaho Movement, as the effort to split the state is known, hopes their county-by-county referendums can convince legislators in both states that enough people want to redraw the map before presenting the formal plan to Congress for approval. And with the movement's growing momentum, they believe the sun is setting on the old Oregon. 2 hours further east, closer to the Idaho border, are communities that feel even more closely aligned with Idaho.
We need to keep our values. It's family, friends, God and country. You have to have it all. Stop the push. Let people live their life.
Oregon's Great Divide comes down to politics, but also a way of life. Older family values versus modern thinking, and a suggestion that polarization may be solved by going their separate ways.